On this episode of Survive and Thrive 8791, I welcome Meghann Dawson to the Buck and Honey's remote studio. Dawson, a powerful voice of resilience and healing from overcoming lifelong medical challenges and a difficult upbringing to breaking cycles and finding purpose. Meghann now helps others rediscover their worth through her work with the Unperfect Life Creative. This will be a good one. Here we go.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. What is up wherever you are, whatever you're doing? I hope you're having a great day. Welcome to another episode of Survive and Thrive 8791. I'm your host, Coach Decora. We are in the Buck and Honey's remote studios on the east side of our great capital city of Madison, Wisconsin. You can listen to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, and YouTube at Survive and Thrive 8791. You can follow the podcast and get access to previous episodes on all of those podcast platforms at Survive and Thrive 8791. The podcast. Don't forget to hit that follow or subscribe button wherever you listen to the show. Leave me a comment if you like what you heard. If there's a topic or you know a guest who would love to share their story, email me at tdecora@gmail.com. Glad you could join us. Our mission is to share stories and conversations that make you cry, laugh, and think, stimulating emotions, creating laughter, and inspiring the mind. A new episode will air on Monday and Thursday morning featuring a wide range of guests. The podcast will touch on many subjects such as, but not limited to, grief, loss of a loved one, recovery, professional setback, mental illness, success despite challenges, etc. Our guests will share how they learn to survive and thrive. Before I introduce our guest, I'd like to highlight our website, surviveandthrive8791.com. You can see what we are doing in the events we are hosting. If you're a business or an advocate for mental health and recovery, we invite you to partner with us through sponsorship opportunities. Please contact us at surviveandthrive8791@gmail.com. This is our guest and episode intro. And according to the internet, and the internet is always right, correct, Meghann?
That's correct, always.
That's correct, always. That's a popular answer on that little question.
I hope you sense a little bit of sarcasm there.
I saw tongue-in-cheek there a little bit. Well, I don't know if this works in your house, but in my house, I don't need the internet. I don't need Alexa. I don't need Siri. I've got my wife, Sarah, and she's always right.
Luckily, my husband, Kelly, has me, so...
Luckily, yes, okay. Yeah, so similar household. Well, according to an AI artificial intelligence overview, while there is no single national database that tracks every individual from birth through adulthood to count total lifetime surgeries, researchers estimate that the average American undergoes approximately 9.2 surgical procedures over an 85-year lifespan. Today's guest has not only had some of those 9.2 surgeries, she's had several additional surgeries from birth to adulthood. Today, I welcome Meghann Dawson to the Buck and Honey's remote studios. Meghann grew up in southeastern New Jersey, just outside Atlantic City, and attended Oak Crest High School and is a proud Falcon. After high school, Meghann would take her talents to Penn State University, where she graduated with a degree in psychology. She planned on going to graduate school, but found a professional career in adult education in the credit union industry. Most recently, she entered the human development arena, where she serves as an empowerment coach, speaker, author, and podcast host. Today, I'm so glad you could join us. Meghann Dawson, what is up?
What is up, Tim? I am excited to be here.
I've had a couple of other podcast hosts, so this is going to be great in the fact that I get to have you on as a guest, and then I can maybe also pick your brain a little bit.
Yeah, of course. And then I'll have to have you as a guest on my show in the upcoming months. Would love to have you for that.
Can't wait.
Yes.
Can't wait. How has the first part of the year been going? Do you do any New Year's resolutions? Do you make any proclamations for the year? What do you do?
I dropped the resolutions years ago, but I started doing intentions for the year. So essentially words for this year. My words for this year, and I've decided these are my words now for every day, forever going forward. And they are peace and freedom. Peace
and freedom. I like that. I also like, I've had several people on here now, but it must be just the new terms and whatever for New Year's resolution, our intentions.
Yes.
And I intend to do this year, and I think it's a good phrase, good word to use.
I think having the words just helps be a lens to measure your moments against versus something that's kind of a judging presence looming over you.
And usually those New Year's resolutions, like getting active and starting to weight train and cardio usually stop.
Exactly.
About 2 weeks in.
And Tim, I have to share, I'm so excited because along with those intention words, I do have bucket list items for my year. And for this year, I set 3 items for the entire year.
And they are starting backwards, number 3.
Number 3 was speaking to a live audience with my personal story.
And I think I know a guy that can make that happen.
It's been checked off already. So I've had 1 already this year. 2 was getting my book published. So my first book, my memoir, Becoming is Messy. I am so excited to announce that is in the works and will be published, launching December 15th.
December 15th. Okay. I've had a couple of authors come on and talked about being in the process, just finishing the process. So you're kind of still in it. So
I'm in it, but I have the publisher. I'm working. I just had a call yesterday working on the cover design. It's just such a fun process. And as somebody that has had a dream of writing my story in a book, this is a dream come true. And then the third one, you mentioned I'm a podcast host. My podcast is video, but it's all been virtual so far. We haven't gotten in person. I haven't been to a studio like yours. And one of my third bucket list item this year was doing a podcast in person.
Okay.
And so check, let's high five there.
High five. And I've got my hand up. I can volunteer to be your first in-person guest if you want.
Yeah, well, you can be a guest on mine, but you brought me here, so I'm a guest on yours. So I'm counting this. This is exciting. So we can check.
Check those boxes. So when that book gets published, we'll maybe have you come back to talk about the book and go a little deeper dive and if there's something else that has happened with the coaching stuff, we can certainly talk about that. We're in the middle of the spring. We're shooting in the early morning of April 9th, and summer is right around the corner. So what does Meghann Dawson look forward to in the summer?
Oh, Madison in the summer is just incredible. I think just being outside, the amount of outdoor restaurants is sitting out in a patio with a couple of friends, having some cocktails.
Wind blowing in your face.
Yeah, oh gosh, it's perfect. I love Madison in the summer. I do love to travel, but I try to limit my travel in the summer because Madison is just a perfect place in the summer.
So let's compare then real quick, because you grew up just outside Atlantic City, New Jersey. And how, if you were to compare one to the other, what are the comparisons? And then maybe what do you like more so in Madison than Atlantic City?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up on an island, Brigantine, New Jersey, right outside of Atlantic City until high school. And then I moved to Mays Landing, where I went to Oak Crest High School. But I grew up by an ocean. And so the beach community was really cool. I grew up going to bonfires.
As you said, beach.
Yeah, beach is hard
ocean.
Beach is.
I could start smelling.
Yeah, the ocean. I mean, that salt air. When I was in high school, when I was in college, my parents had a boat, and so you could boat to restaurants. There was little inlets and stuff, and so just being on the water was really a kind of a neat thing to experience growing up. Madison, the people here, the community feel. Not to say I love my New Jersey community, but it was a little bit more spread out, a little bit more pockets of community, where I feel like here in Madison, even when you don't know people, everybody feels like your community here. And it's a really special space. I always thought that I would end up moving back to New Jersey someday, but now here I am, 23, 24 years since moving here. My kids are here. We've raised them in Madison, and it truly is home, and I don't see that changing.
Right. When you mentioned the water, we obviously have Lake Mendota, Lake Monona. It's probably somewhat similar. It's not you don't get that smell of the salt water, but you get to enjoy the water. Do you have a boat? Do you guys get access?
We don't have a boat. We're those people that love friends with boats.
Friends with boats.
And so we're in the market for friends with boats. And so if anybody listening is one of those folks that want some new friends to hang out on their boat,
we'll get you Megan's email address and contact numbers if you have a boat and want to get her out there, you can do so. Before we get to your story, I need to talk about our sponsor. Our sponsor, Buck and Honey's, are a place that people can escape to. For me, it's a great escape from cooking dinner. Do you cook dinner? Do you cook? And if so, what's your genre, style, or cuisine?
I love to cook, and I'm lucky. My husband also loves to cook, so we cook together. Sometimes he's the main chef, I'm the sous chef.
And
Sometimes
you're
we
the sous chef,
switch.
yeah.
We both have kind of our go-to. And for me, lately, it switches. I've heard my butter chicken is pretty delicious.
Butter chicken, okay.
Butter chicken. So I love some of the, the different cultures of food. Yeah. Lately, though, I have been obsessed with making a Szechuan soup. And so kind of a spicy beef with good beef broth. I've been really getting all those bones and making homemade beef broth. Just something about lately in that nourishment of soup has been kind of on my palate.
Like a ramen feel or
sometimes,
like a pho?
Yeah, it's kind of a mix of, I would say closer to ramen. It's really a kind of a beef broth with nice chilies and Szechuan pepper, corn, and oh gosh, it's so good. There's this stuff called spicy bean paste, and it has that Szechuan pepper, kind of like tingles your tongue a little bit, and something about that with the beef broth. It's perfect for the cold months.
Well, he had me at ramen. Well, with their great food and drink menu, 5-star customer service, and a welcoming and vibrant atmosphere, people keep coming back with locations in Sun Prairie, Monona, Waunakee, and Mount Horeb, Wisconsin. Most communities in Dane County, which encompasses the Madison metropolitan area, can get to a Buck and Honey's within 10 to 15 minutes. Drum roll. There's my awesome Menards acoustically sound table. Have you been to Buck and Honey's?
Of course. I think I've been to almost all of them, just not the Mount.
Really?
I haven't been to the Mount Horeb location yet, so I have to head out there and check it out.
You'll have to head out there and check it out. Do you have a favorite dish?
I am an appetizer girl, and their stuffed dates are incredible. So those are usually my go-to. I switch up on the mains. I know they have a good ahi tuna dish that I've really liked in the past, but the dates are always my go-to.
Firecracker shrimp.
Oh, the firecracker shrimp too. Yep, those two. That's right. I was forgetting about those, but you're right. Those are typically my friend group's two appetizer orders. Those.
You can always order, and I've done this. I think we did this the last time we were there a couple of weeks ago. We ordered a small pizza, Bombers special cracker crust. I would recommend that. I've been eating that since the mid-'80s, probably before you were born. So,
well, we'll add that to the list.
We'll add that to that list. On the podcast, our guests follow the format for sharing their story like this. In segment 1, we talk about what was it like. We'll get into Meghann's history, what happened to get Meghann on the podcast. And in segment 2, we continue to talk about what happened and get into what it's like now. And we discuss Meghann's 5 suggestions for thriving. You grew up just outside of Atlantic City. I can hear the slot machines right now when I say Atlantic City, New Jersey. Graduating from Oak Crest High School, and you already mentioned you're a proud Falcon. Tell us about what life was like growing up. You sprinkled it in there a little bit that you were near the ocean to begin with, and then you moved inland. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I grew up from 3rd grade to 8th grade is really my main memories of young childhood, and that was in Brigantine, New Jersey, which is an island right outside of Atlantic City. To get there, you have to take a bridge from Atlantic City over to the island of Brigantine. And for folks listening, somehow when I travel, a lot of people have been to Brigantine. It's this tiny island, yet it's a common island. Fun fact, it was a question one time on Jeopardy. Where was the windiest place in the United States?
Recorded.
And it was not Chicago. It was recorded as Brigantine, New Jersey.
Brigantine, New Jersey. Okay.
Yep. And so much different today. Today, it's a very bougie, huge house community. Like, lots of...
On stilts.
On stilts, yes. Lots of Airbnbs and people that have big houses elsewhere use this as their summer destination. But when I was growing up, it was a small community. We did have what we called shoobies, which were visitors.
Shoobies, okay.
Shoobies was what we called the people that would come in the summer and kind of take over the island. And so you grew up with like the locals, which was my community, the people I went to school with, and my friends and my family's friends. But then you also had the visitors that would come into the summer months. So just like a typical shore community where you'd have it gets a lot busier. All of a sudden you just get this buzzy kind of feel that all of a sudden it's kind of switching seasons, and then things would really ramp up. You'd get to meet new people. As a young 6th, 7th grader, the cute boys would come into the summer. All of a sudden, you got new potentials that were coming in. There was bonfires and get-togethers, and so it was a neat community to grow up in.
That reminds me a little bit of the community I grew up in, and you've probably been to Wisconsin Dells.
Of course,
and that's
yes.
where I grew up. And when you talked about people coming to Brigantine, I was immediately brought back to my high school and elementary grades, that people would come to the Dells and stay, and we had a different name than Shoebies.
Yeah.
But they would come, and then the doors would close on the summer and in Labor Day, and we were back to normal.
That's right.
So you then moved inland to Oak Crest High School and Mays
Landing. Yeah.
And what are some of your favorite memories from high school? Talk about those.
Yeah, so I had a friend group. We called ourselves the Fab Five. So my best friends were, the first two were identical twins, Amy and Dawn. And then we also had Lori and Carissa. And the five of us were connected at the hip. We did sleepovers. My house was the sleepover house. Mm-hmm. My parents lived out in the woods, and we had no close neighbors. And so my house was where everybody would crash on weekends. My mom loved it, not having to worry about us out driving late at night. Boys and girls, actually. And our house just became the kind of catch-all after everybody was out on weekends. And so my mom said that she got to the point where she would, by Monday morning, all the groceries that she had gotten Friday were completely gone for the family. So then she started getting cheap things for my friends, which became pancakes. And so Sunday morning, all the people in my high school knew that my mom was going to make pancakes, and they thought she was doing it out of the goodness of her heart. Really, she was doing it to feed a lot of people on the cheap. But I'm assuming it was a mix of those things.
So, yeah, that's great that I grew up in the same, again, fashion that we always had a couple of friends, moms that would feed us all the time, and we'd come in and, hey, what do you want? And I've got this and I've got that. So, yeah, that's great stuff. Tell us about your family growing up, mom, dad, and then you had two younger brothers. Spin some yarns about them.
Yeah, so my mom was 15 when she had me. She turned 16 soon after. So young teenage mom. And so growing up, at first, really, actually my whole life, my grandparents were kind of second parents to me. When I was first born, we lived with my grandparents. Obviously, I don't remember that, but pretty soon after, my mom ended up marrying my dad. I was in their wedding. So at 18 months old, I walked down the aisle as their flower girl.
Sprinkling flowers, petals.
Yeah, exactly. There's a rumor that on the honeymoon, which I went to, I walked into the master bedroom and saw the big king-size bed and plopped right in the middle and said, "This is my spot." So that kind of energy may be me a little bit now, too. I don't mind a little bit of attention on myself.
Absolutely.
So, but eventually my dad developed a problem with alcohol. And back then, if I look at it from the lens of my childhood, my dad really became, in my mind, kind of the villain, the monster in my story back then. Over the years, that certainly has shifted for me, and we can talk about that as we go. But back then, I was very protective of my mom because my dad was verbally abusive, sometimes physically abusive to her. And I had eventually two younger brothers. My middle brother's John, and he's 3.5 years younger than me. And my youngest, my baby brother's Joe, and he's 7 years younger than me. And so as we were growing up, I was the oldest child, and with a father that treated our mother that way, I very much thought at a young age that I was the protector of the household. I very much was the bedroom that my mom and brothers would come into, especially my mom and middle brother, Joey. Baby Joey was so little, but they would come in my room crying after my dad's outbursts, and I believed it was my responsibility to take care of them.
So you were kind of like the little mother, sort of.
Oh, definitely. Yep.
You have a family of your own, husband, Kelly, and 3 amazing kiddos. Talk about that.
Yeah, so Kelly is my second, we're both on our second marriages. We call our blended family the home team.
Home team,
Our
okay.
home team. Blended families are interesting. And as we were piecing together our home team and when we originally decided to get remarried, family just had a heavy feeling for us. And we didn't want to put that burden on the kids as we were kind of defining and all growing into each other. And so home team just kind of felt like it embodied us. Our oldest son is Mason, and he is a freshman. He's just finishing his freshman year out at Wentworth Technology Institute in Boston. And our middle daughter, Mara, is a senior at Madison West, and she's going to be starting Boston University in August. And then our youngest is Emmy, and she's a junior at Verona High School.
So they're kind of migrating back to the sort of the
Interesting,
homeland, going out east.
Yes, and it's so interesting because Mason is Kelly's biological son.
Okay.
Mara is my biological daughter, and they both just discovered Boston on their own and have their different reasons, but they fell in love with it, which it's just interesting. It was a town that I really wanted to go to school, even though I ended up picking Penn State. I looked at a lot of Boston schools, and Boston has always been special to me, and it's pretty cool now that we have kids that we can go visit there.
Maybe your youngest will throw you a curveball and go out west.
I know. I don't know. She has UW-Madison right now on her radar, so we'll see if she sticks with that or not.
That's still going east from where you're at. So still a little bit east, but real close. After high school, you would attend Penn State University, a Nittany Lion.
I am a Nittany Lion. I'm a proud Nittany Lion, more so than a proud Falcon.
More so. And graduate with a degree in psychology. And that, to me, screams grad school.
Yes, me too.
That was the plan. But tell us what happened.
Yeah, just like so many other folks, when I took a break from undergrad, I needed to make some money for myself. I wasn't going to get financial support for grad school. And so I paused. At the time I was dating my first husband and kind of was of the mindset of, I felt lucky at him and I started dating at the last month of college. And my broken self-worth back then, I thought I had kind of won the lottery and landed somebody that was going to be my person, like I feel like that was a thing growing up, that you didn't leave college without finding your spouse. And so I kind of followed him, and he moved us to Harrisburg for his first job. And I just always planned on going back to grad school, but I had to work to get there. And I started a job I found on monster.com for folks that remember the days that was our go-to. That was our LinkedIn back then. And I discovered a job at a small trade association, and I fell in love with it. I was putting together conferences at this small association, and that eventually led me, when we moved to Madison, it led me to Credit Union National Association, Trade Association for Credit Unions, and that has led to a very successful 23-year career in that industry.
Starting at age 2 of your life, you would start your road on surgeries, or you had several surgeries. Tell us, and this is kind of the reason why you're on the podcast, is to talk about some of those things and then how you handled those situations. And then the surgeries were the bumps in the road, but then you also had some of these other life things going on that were bumps in the road, and you handled them fairly well. I mean, you survived and you're now thriving. Tell us what started things off with some of the surgeries that you had.
Yeah, so my medical journey actually started at birth. When I was born, again, to a teenage mom, I caught an infection in the hospital. Looking back with the facts that we know, I think it was partly because she was a teenage mom. Her water broke on a Friday or Saturday night, and the doctor was out on the golf course and suggested that my mom wait and come in the next day. And so because of that decision, an infection ended up wreaking havoc on my body. And so by the time I was delivered premature. I came 6 weeks early. The next day after she had called the hospital, and I had a low-grade fever. They didn't know why. Turns out, after a few days of that fever not going away, turns out it was a staph infection because I had been in her womb when I should have been delivered. And that staph infection led to wreaking havoc across my bones. And so my shoulder joints and my hip joints is really where the infection settled and just mangled them. If you saw them on an X-ray, it just looked like a mangled mess. And that led to shortening my limbs. It led because it damaged the growth plates. And so it also damaged the mobility of my arms and my hips. And so both my arms stopped growing when I was in the second grade, the tops of my arms. And I can't raise my arms above my head. And my joints have severe pain. So I've never known a body that doesn't have pain since I grew up like that. So because of the mangled joints, by the time I turned 2, my hip joints had kind of wrapped around so much that they were kind of fusing. And I guess, I don't know the medical terms that much, but essentially when you're born, there's still some malleability to your development. And so I needed to get a plate put in at 2 to be able to make sure that my hips were going to be functionable. So it would still be painful, but it needed to kind of lock my hip in place to be able to, so I would be able to walk. And so that was kind of surgery 1. And then across my lifetime, I've had lots of surgeries to address the aftermath of that, the most severe being the removal of my growth plate of my good leg. So I now am about 1.5 inches, 2 inches shorter than I should be. So at 5'3", because I used to have a really severe difference in limp. So I used to have to get like a 2-inch lift piece of plastic
shoe,
in my on the outside of my shoe. And so to address that, they stopped the growing of my good leg. It was so cool. I would have to get my hands x-rayed every couple months growing up. And that was how they predicted when my growth would stop. To help kind of predict when they would eventually take the growth plate out of my good leg so the bad leg could catch up. And that was in 6th grade. And then when I was a sophomore in college was the most insane of my surgeries, which was having the tops of my arms lengthened, surgically limb lengthened. And so that entailed having the tops of my arms broken and a fixator device put on, where for 9 months I turned a key 4 times a day that slowly stretched the tops of my arms. And eventually, as you do that, the gap that it forms in between the bones, new bone growth fills in there and solidifies. And so those were some of the more major of my surgeries. Lots of minor, lots of additional hip, like that plate, having that put in and out. And then eventually hip replacement, which I had a few years back, and shoulder resurfacing. So lots tied to that. But then in addition, across my life, I've had lots of other medical things popping up. And so I've had hysterectomy. I had thyroid cancer 2 years ago, so I have a thyroidectomy. I have an appendectomy. So, I feel like I don't have a lot of organs left to remove.
There's a couple thoughts I had. First of all, the protective housing, the placenta that you were in, and maybe back then, they obviously didn't know as much as they do now, but your mom probably should have went in as soon as the water broke.
Of course, yes.
Go in, and that protective placenta would protect you from all of these invaders like the staph infection. That's what I was thinking of. Number 2 was turning the key. Kind of reminded me a little bit of when our kids all had braces and you had to go and turn the key to widen their mouth a little bit. And that's what I thought of. Very
similar.
And then I just, the Chicago Med, I believe, is the show that's on Wednesday nights. And they had an episode of where a guy was 5'7", but then he decided to get these lengthening things in his legs that made him
taller,
like 6'2".
Yes.
And there was an infection in there as well. And they were concerned that they might have to remove all of that stuff. So is that kind of what happened, is that you got it installed and then do they remove things as well?
Yeah, so so if anybody's ever seen the movie Gattaca, that was one of the first movies that I saw that had that fixator. There's other ones out there now too, like you've mentioned. But yeah, so the fixators were essentially kind of like big metal rods or piercings that went through the top and bottom of my bone and then that middle gap. And so the outside fixator would separate those. And then eventually when I got to a length that was acceptable, to be honest, I wish I went a couple inches longer. The tops of my arms still, as a woman, of course, I'm never going to think I'm perfect. But I just got sick of wearing those darn things. And so eventually you lock them in place. The bone regrew. And then I went into the hospital one day and we're like, all right, the bone's good. And so I was wide awake and they just unscrewed it from my bone. As I was just sitting at the doctor table, they just unscrewed each of the 4 bars right outside of the bone. It was kind of crazy.
That is just fascinating how,
Yes.
how you're here in the Buck and Honey's remote studios today with a smile on your face and lots of surgeries you've gone through. And you talk about the other thing is the pain, and that you probably at some point had to just accept that this is going to be your life from here on out. And I may have you touch on that a little bit in the second segment.
Sure.
Where you just kind of talk about, okay, this is what it is. This is how it's going to be. How do I react, or how do I adjust to this new normal, or you always knew it was like this?
Exactly.
I'd love to have you touch on that, but good stuff. Because our listeners want to hear the rest of your story and what brought you to the podcast, I need to talk about our sponsor one more time. Buck and Honey's has been with the Survive and Thrive 8791 crew since the beginning, with 4 locations in the Madison area. One is always near. People ask why Buck and Honey's. Owner Tom Anderson places a high priority on the mental health of his employees. He has a mental health professional available for them should they need support. I don't know how many businesses go above and beyond their EAP, Employee Assistance Program, but Buck and Honey's does. Meghann Dawson is in the Buck and Honey's remote studios today to talk about her life and how she has survived a life of surgeries that started at age 2 and as recent as 2024. She's here to share her story and what it takes to remain positive despite the curveballs life has thrown at her. You'll hear more about that and the work she is doing now. Please stay tuned. Don't change that channel. You're not going to want to miss segment 2 of Survive and Thrive 8791. We will be back.
If you, a loved one, or someone you know is experiencing a physical, mental, or emotional crisis, there is help and resources out there. Contact NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness Helpline, at 1-800-950-6264. This is a free service providing information, resource referrals, and support to people living with a mental illness, their family, providers, and the public. United Way 211 is available 24/7, 365 and offers free confidential assistance. They connect people with the local programs and services that can help. Dial 211. Emergency Crisis Services, dial 911. The Suicide Prevention Lifeline, dial 988. To connect via web, chat, visit suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Along with those numbers, there is help. You just need to say 3 words. I need help. Now, back to the show.
We are back. Welcome back to segment 2 of Survive and Thrive 8791. I'm your host, Coach Tim DeCora. We are in the Buck and Honey's remote studios on the east side of our great capital city of Madison, Wisconsin. The podcast is where we feature guests who share their story in hopes of helping others who may be struggling with what life throws at them. Today, I'm glad to be joined in the Buck and Honey's remote studios by Meghann Dawson. She is here to talk about how she has worked through a life of health-related issues that led to several surgeries in her life, and she's here to share that. You'll hear the rest of her story and how she's giving others strategies to succeed in life as an empowerment coach and some other positive endeavors that she's involved with. Segment 2, facing health-related obstacles. You had to cope with a tumultuous upbringing, and you touched on that a little bit. What were you dealing with as a youngster?
Gosh, what a question. I was dealing with a lot. I had a lot on my shoulders as a youngster, I had a lot that I didn't know how to navigate or realize how massive what I was facing back then was. I just knew that my reality was here, living in a home where I heard fighting a lot. I heard my dad hitting my mom, throwing stuff at my mom. I also was in a body that wasn't like the other kids. Up until third grade, I kind of viewed some of the medical stuff as like almost like special about me because it got me attention. Sometimes I would be the girl in a wheelchair after a surgery and everybody would like fight to be able to push me to class. And when I was on crutches sometimes after a surgery, the kids thought that was cool. And then all of a sudden in fourth grade, I think was really when the differences started to be viewed by other kids as negative, as less than. And, that's really when I started seeing people behind my back, making fun of my arms. I very much often T-Rex was a bully nickname for me because my arms were short. And so that was a word that I would hear associated with me. And then boys started recognizing me, but it had to always be in secret. It was very much back then when I think just an early formation of something that became really something that's been a lifelong challenge for me has been my worthiness tied to the opposite sex and so craving, just like all the other girls in my grade, wanting to be liked, wanting to be asked to some of those little dances, wanting somebody to ask me to dance, wanting boys to notice me. And even though I had the same needs as everybody else, I had a difference that made me somebody that people didn't want to admit that they ever liked. And so even though I was somebody that people would talk to or maybe be friends with, when it came to boys, from a very early on age, I was always their person in secret. And so that really led for me years of developing coping and surviving mechanisms, which for me was a mix of perfectionism, learning how to succeed. I ended up being the 8th grade valedictorian. I was a very smart and driven student. I worked very hard, but at the same time as being so driven, behind the scenes, I was drinking to numb. When I was in 6th grade, a friend's senior high school brother taught us how to play a drinking game. And it was my first time feeling the sensation of being drunk. And I loved it. It quieted my brain in a way that I had never felt before. And that was something that I continued well into my late 20s, was finding ways to escape with alcohol. And then also, when it came to boys, I started realizing that, things that I did with them behind closed doors, there were moments that made me feel wanted, that made me feel liked. And so at a very early age, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, I was very much doing physical things that were way more mature than my mind knew how to handle. And very quickly, the boys started not being my age. Very quickly, they were high school boys and then even college boys when I was still in middle school.
So the question I have, at least I'm thinking of like the listeners, what age did you start to experience? You said kids were picking on you, and in particular boys, and you were just like most of the other girls. Mm-hmm. You wanted to have a boyfriend or you wanted to be in a relationship. When did that start to become normal after some of your early surgeries?
Not until my now husband. So that's something that makes me feel pretty emotional because I had those kind of situationships starting in 6th grade, all the way through my first marriage. So I have lots and lots of stories of people using me, throwing me away, me participating in affairs, whether I was cheating on somebody or somebody was cheating on their person with me, situations where I was wrong. Having a brother wake me up an older brother wake me up at a sleepover when I was just in 8th grade. He was a freshman in college, wake me up at the sleepover to go make out. And in those moments, I felt chosen, and that kind of behavior was my norm, and it was what I felt I had to settle for if I was to experience any type of connection. And that very much lasted until I was in my early 30s, that behavior.
There were other pivotal moments in your life that would, as you mentioned, shake the foundation of who you were. What else occurred?
Well, so I did meet my first husband in college, and right as I was about to graduate, and he was very similar to the dad who raised me, and very verbally abusive, drank too much. I've come to learn that he was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. I know we talk a lot about mental illness on your show, and it's one of those. Looking back, I talk about people that have hurt me, but now in my space, here I am at 47, and there are no villains in my story. There's people that are hurting in different ways and not knowing how to cope with that. So I don't blame him. I don't blame my dad for his alcoholism and his behaviors. I know there was a mental health aspect, but as far as my experience in that marriage, it just broke me down further. It kept me as small as I always had been. And here I was out in the world. My career was thriving. I was very respected out in the credit union industry. I was out leading massive adult education conferences, and I was seen as a mentor and a leader. And yet in my own home, I tolerated somebody that called me stupid, that made me feel like I knew nothing. I mean, I couldn't even pick what music we listened to, what TV shows we watched, because all of my beliefs were considered stupid. And I eventually became a mom after years of infertility. That was another one of my health struggles. And I knew in my heart I was meant to be a mom, and I knew that would happen for me someday in some way. And my daughter Mara was a little miracle. My body had things happen to it that made it hard to get pregnant. And also I had surgeries that made it hard to carry a pregnancy. And then when I had her, I had something called preeclampsia that almost risked both of our lives during birth. Yet here she was, and I was nursing her in the middle of the night one time, just at a few weeks old, and I finally got this nudge. Here I was at 29, 30 years old, and I finally got this inner voice that said to me, it's time to do better, or you're going to pass the same wounds onto her.
Yeah, it's crazy how we, break the cycle at some point, and, who knows how long this cycle went of women in your life and relatives that have, passed it down, and you have the opportunity to take that nudge or that mental hint and say, I think I need to get out of this, and I don't want my daughter experiencing what I experienced, and so forth. And so you decided to make the change, and you got out of that relationship, yes. Correct?
Yes, I did. It took a while. It took a long time. It took, I got that voice. I had a lifetime of self-destructive behaviors and things happening to me that hurt me. And so now I had this little person that I was responsible for. And so even though that voice told me to do better, I did not instantly have the tools or the awareness or knowledge of how to do better. However, I did start following that inner voice and finding ways to listen to it and hear it more. And where that took me was therapy was a first part. Therapy for me, it was a secret because I knew back then my first husband wouldn't have approved, and he wouldn't have let me do that. And so I went in secret, and that started giving me the courage and some awareness of the things that I needed to start doing to heal myself. I also started embracing spirituality. I read this book called The Celestine Prophecy. And for me, it was just this open experience to what was possible if I took care of myself, if I paid attention to the universe, I started focusing on my breath, and that led to meditation and all the spiritual practices. And it was just a journey to finally give me the courage to love myself enough to stand up to my first husband and eventually leave that marriage.
I mean, since the show has a mental health component to it, during that time of being in that relationship, getting out of the relationship, and other things happening in your life with your health issues, were you experiencing any anxiety, depression? Because when I think of mental health, those are the the two main culprits that affect people. Which one of those two were you experiencing?
I am massively an anxious person, and I've come to learn that anxiety had been my norm state for as long as I can remember. Sometimes I mix up the fight, flight, freeze, fawn. I had been in essentially a frozen state for so long because of my own needs had never been tended to, had never been the priority. And so I was just used to a body that was, in a constant state that wasn't the healthy state. And so what that led to, I constantly was jittery. I constantly, my stomach, I just had stomach problems all the time. I didn't know, just like I didn't know a body without pain, I don't think I knew a body without anxiety until I started walking this healing path.
Yeah, it was the same way. And then I always thought that I was always ready to go.
Yes, exactly.
And you talk about being jittery. I was always jittery, but I felt that it made me ready to go until I started talking to somebody about these feelings that I was having, and somebody finally saying, dude, those aren't normal.
Yes.
You should be able to calm yourself at times. And I never felt calm. I always just attributed to I'm always ready to go.
Exactly.
I was born ready.
Yes. I relate to that. One time I walked into my therapist's appointment for that day, and she called attention to something that I just had never noticed before. And she said, Meghann, I'm worried about your heart, because every time you come in here, I can sense that you've just been going, and you never come down. And so that adrenaline was just fueling me and keeping me on the go for so long.
You talked about coping in intermediate school, middle school, and then high school using alcohol.
Yeah.
And I think that at least for me, alcohol did work. Mm-hmm. And it calmed those noises in your head, that calmed you down and relaxed you. And anybody who has used alcohol knows that, until it stops working and starts causing problems for your relationships or job or professional life or health, etc. How were you coping, and what strategies were you using to replace alcohol and do a little bit better, healthier job for you?
So my alcohol use, and I think for listeners, I'm sure some can relate, because I think that there's such a spectrum of what alcohol abuse can look like. For me, I never had a dependency on alcohol, in that it's not like I wasn't a frequent drinker. I was an escapist drinker. I turned to alcohol for the extremes when that anxious feeling got too much for me. I had a job that put me on the road, so I traveled a ton. And those conferences and events that I went to, drinking was part of the culture. And so when I drank, I overdid it. And I would regularly find myself in blackout states, where I always say, gosh, why when you're blacked out does nothing good ever seem to happen? So when I would be blacked out, either I would be fooling around with somebody I shouldn't be fooling around with, and then I not remember it, or just other times, I've peed my pants in embarrassing situations. I've woken up in places I don't remember. And so it was, and then the next day would just be that shame spiral, days of shame, because I couldn't remember all of the dumb things that I had done. And as I started going to therapy, and as I started finding those spiritual practices, for me, meditation has been critical to my toolbox. But as I started finding ways to bring my own peace to myself, and I started loving myself, the need for that escapism for me dissipated. And so there certainly has been times, and I believe we might talk about one or two of them when I am still an imperfect human and life still happens to me. And no matter how much peace and freedom I try to maintain in myself, I'm not a perfect person. And sometimes I can be triggered into seeking that coping mechanism, but it's few and far between these days.
A lot of people during these times don't have anybody to lean on for support. And that may have sounded, especially when you're going through a separation and ultimately a divorce, you're maybe trying to keep that quiet, and then you're really not talking to very many people, and it's just you, and you had a coping strategy built in with your daughter, and you had to take care of her. But who were you leaning on for support during this time, or who did you start leaning on for support?
I went quite a while with the divorce journey. I went quite a while by myself. And I do think that part of the kind of hero's journey that I believe we are all called to walk to find our purpose, in many ways is a solo journey. There are parts of it that I do think that we have to kind of own ourselves. However, as I walked that journey, a huge part, and all these things we're talking about, this is essentially my coaching framework unfolding. This was unfolding in real time for me, was, the starting with therapy and then spiritual practices. And then it was confronting and starting to look back, and I learned this in therapy, was starting to look back at my life through the lens of a compassionate observer. So think about it like this. And loving my daughter very much has been a part of helping me with this, but looking back across your life through the lens that you would look through the people you love most. And when you start doing that, you give grace to your past self. You no longer judge yourself so harshly. You no longer look, like for me, I no longer look at something I did in 6th grade and blame myself for. And so then as I gave compassion to those things, I realized that the secrets about those same things were weighing me down. And now that I had compassion about them, I was free to talk about them. And I have some close girlfriends that became my safe place to just test it. And I would say to people listening, not everybody is owed your story. There are some people, and even today, there's people that are my close friends, but they're the people I go to when I need a pep talk. Sometimes they're the harshest. They're not who I go to with kind of my most sensitive information and truth, but I would go to the people that I knew had no judgment towards me and could just hold that for me. They might hold me accountable, but they could at least hold space and just let me breathe. And as I've done that, that's now led me. I mean, here I am, 10, 12 years later, sharing everything on a podcast. It's like, but it started with those trusted people. And I will tell you, freeing secrets has been the most healing part of this journey.
We talked about that off air before we hit the record button, of how hard it had to be the very first time that we both had to share some deep, dark secrets with somebody. And for at least me, it was a therapist and a counselor.
Yep.
And it's their job to keep it all quiet and zipped up. And then I started sharing it publicly, and it started to get a lot easier. It was hard in the beginning, just like anything else that we do. It's, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it.
Yep.
But it's hard in the beginning, but it gets so much easier. When did you first start talking about some of the behaviors that you were doing in 6th grade, 7th grade? Did it take a long time for that stuff to bubble up and come out, or?
Yeah, it did. There were some things that I swore I would take to my grave, to be honest. And especially the stuff in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, those are really hard memories for me. My path looked like starting with a trusted friend about my adult affairs, and so I opened up to that. That was really hard, admitting that. It's still a hard topic. I think that our society, the way we treat affairs is I think is so extreme, and
it's the worst thing in the world.
The worst thing, more than
You're horrible.
Exactly, and it's like that. I feel like it. To me, it's just another messy, broken type thing, like a million things. I mean, and I'm not trying to make light of it, but it's just anyway. So that was really hard. But then it got to the point, and my husband now, it was the first person that I ever shared the hardest parts of my 6th and 7th grade. And I would say, kind of back to your question of who I leaned on, in the last 10 years, my healing has expedited because my life partner is my grounding. There is nothing that he doesn't know about me, not because he is judgmental and like has to know it, but because he is the safest place. It makes me kind of want to cry because I have zero judgment from him, and it is provided I think of the healing to that anxious nervous system, and the way he's let me breathe and just be whole is incredible.
Shout out Kelly.
Oh, he's a good guy.
Well, you already touched on it a little bit, and we're gonna move past one of the things I had on my list because I think this is gonna mean a lot to the listeners out there. Is that let's talk about Meghann Dawson, the empowerment coach. What kinds of work do you do? This is your opportunity to talk a little bit about what you do and the things you offer, and then we'll definitely include in the show notes how to get a hold of you.
Perfect.
So go ahead and talk about that.
Yes, I'm so excited right now. I will admit I am in a season of learning this part of me, this entrepreneur spirit. I left my corporate job a little over a year ago, and I planned on launching a coaching business. I have a degree in psychology. I got my coaching certification. I have my own coaching framework, which is called the Unperfect Level Up. It is essentially the steps we've been talking about today, but it's helping people come back to themselves and stop living life for everybody else and learn how to love themselves wholly. I always say wholeness first. And then from there, you get to unlock your purpose and create your ripple to heal the world. And so I believe it's my mission to help people come back to themselves and heal and learn to fully love themselves. And I envision that being kind of a one-on-one coaching framework. But to be honest, Tim, that really hasn't come together. It's kind of like growing in more of a group dynamic. And so I'm right in the process, so excited. In the next couple of weeks, I'm launching my rebranded business, which is the Unperfect Life Collective. People can still find me at MeghannDawson.com to stay up to date on this, but essentially I am building a collective to really shine a light on the community of people like yourself who have walked this path of wholeness, who are living authentic lives, and are making the world a better place because they've healed themselves first. And then in addition to shining a light on that, I have tools to help people. If you're not there yet, I do have coaching, group coaching available to help you get there.
So that would be Meghann Dawson. Dawson's easy. Dawson. The Meghann is
That's interesting.
The challenging one is it's MEGHANN.
Yes.
And then MeghannDawson.com is where you can find her and some of the things that she is doing now. We need more people. We need more boots on the ground. And some people are afraid or scared or whatever it is. They don't want to go to a counselor. They don't want to go to therapy. This is that ramped down a little bit, and it's a little more accessible, easier to get in touch with you. And we just need more people doing this kind of work. 3 other things that I want you to touch on. We'll take about, I'd say 60 seconds. You're a keynote speaker where people can call you and get in touch with you and come and talk to their different groups, businesses, libraries. You mentioned about being an author, and that book is going to be coming out in December. and you're a podcast host. So start with the keynote speaking.
Yeah. So, exactly. I have this framework that I'm happy to bring to organizations. And so that could look like coming to an event and being a keynote speaker at your event, or it could look like partnering with your organization and doing a kind of a couple week cohort in your organization to actually go deep dive and work into that framework. And then beyond that, we have the book that I mentioned. The book is called Becoming is Messy. This is part 1 of a 3-book trilogy. So it's the Unperfect Life trilogy. Part 1 is Becoming is Messy, which will be out in December, pre-sales launch in August. And there'll be a place to sign up on the website. So excited for that. And then the podcast. You mentioned, that there's people listening that maybe therapy is too much. Maybe signing up for group coaching is too much right now. The podcast, Becoming is Messy. Not only do I have guests, I'm excited. Hopefully we'll have Tim eventually, but
Absolutely.
Podcast to shine a light on so many great authentic people and how they are creating their healing ripple. But the first 8 episodes are essentially the Unperfect Level Up framework, going deep. And so just a great free resource if you're curious to check this work out, and just do that on your own time and your own safety, and see if there's anything that maybe sparks a little bit of wisdom to help your journey forward.
I always say, I've told people this, is that, some people need therapy. I've heard the sentence, or heard people say this: everybody should have a counselor or a therapist.
Agreed.
But if you don't want to go to a counselor or a therapist, can you at least listen to a podcast? Because there are a lot of podcasts out there that can give you exactly what you need. And at least my podcast, and probably yours, you bring on guests who have gone through similar situations, similar stories. They've walked the same path, and then they give you the 5 suggestions or 10 or whatever suggestions it is to survive and thrive. And at least start from there, and then maybe go backwards. I listened to a podcast, and now I've heard so many people say, go to a therapist or get a counselor, and now I'm getting a counselor.
Exactly. Go with what your inner gut tells you, Just start somewhere. Start somewhere to take control of your own life.
Take that first step.
One
day at a time, or 1 week at a time, and take that first step. And
Tim, I had another thought too, just for listeners. I'm right here in the Madison community, and I believe in this so much that I'm even happy to grab a cup of coffee, and just talk as humans if anybody is looking for that. And just, I think storytelling, being a safe place to share a little bit about yourself. Like, I am here and believe that this is the way that we make the world a better place.
And you're in a unique situation too. And we are in a unique situation where you don't have to be in Madison, Wisconsin. You can get in touch with Meghann, and you can do that Zoom call or virtual meeting or phone call or whatever your comfort level is. I suggest that if you need some help, or share Meghann's information with a neighbor, relative, loved one, coworker, she's here to help. This is where the subscribers, followers, and listeners take out the notebooks, pens, and pencils and jot some things down. Here are Meghann Dawson's 5 suggestions that have allowed her to survive and thrive through a tumultuous life of relationships and also health-related issues. And these are some of the things that she has shared with me, and she's going to share with you today. So here's what she shared, and I'm going to toss these in underhand softball style. Can you hit a softball?
Barely. No, not very good. Not very good.
Well, we're going to try.
I can catch a softball. How about that?
You can catch a softball.
Yeah.
I'll pitch it in, and I'll try to hit the bat.
All right, perfect.
The proverbial hit the bat. So here's what she shared. And I'll have you hit these in about 60 seconds or less. The first one is this: learn to hear your own voice. Go ahead and hit that.
Yeah. So I think that so many of us hear our inner critic and never have heard our inner voice. So if your voice inside always sounds annoying and critical, then you need to do work to find that inner voice. And a lot of the things we're talking about today are going to help you do that. Your inner voice is going to feel good. It's going to feel confident in you. It's going to feel like your best hype man.
I've started about 4 or 5 years ago to talk back to myself.
Same.
I listened to myself for so long and been talked out of so many things. Now I talk back to it, or started asking some questions. So Good stuff. Number 2, get curious about your story. Go ahead and hit that.
Yeah, so we talked about that today, about being compassionate. Look back at the lens of your past through the same lens that you use for the people in your life that you love most.
Number 3, stop trying to earn your worth. Go ahead and hit that.
You don't have to prove anything. You, exactly as you are, listening right now, as imperfect as you are, no matter what mistakes you've made, you are worthy just by being you.
Just be you. Number 4, create spaces where you can be fully seen. Go ahead and hit that.
The right people will not make you shrink or be anything other than you. And so if you are constantly feeling like you have to be something else around the people in your life, find different rooms with different people.
Mm-hmm. And probably more importantly along that line is find people that are walking the path that you're on and start sharing things and trying what other people do. And then also sharing what you've done helps reinforce your own program.
Yep.
Excellent. And last one, number 5, let it be messy. Go and hit that.
Growth is not linear. The things we're talking about today, they are not going to be this magic bullet where you do them once and all of a sudden you've perfected life and it's going to be easy from here on out. Life is going to keep happening. These tools are going to be something you kind of revisit. You're constantly going to be growing and learning, but just keep that growth mindset and keep loving yourself as you do.
Be a lifelong learner.
Yes, it's the best.
That's what I like to say. What an episode. I'm so glad you could join the Survive and Thrive 8791 crew today. Your approach to life and how you manage to navigate a tumultuous life and stay positive is inspiring. It really is. And then you also touched on being in pain for most, if not all of your life. And a lot of people are living like that and can be negative. And here you are, a bright light now in my life as well. Let's see here. Okay. Meghann wanted to share her story and bring awareness to the work she is doing to try to help others as an empowerment coach. And you're sharing your strategies with others and empowering them. That is awesome. Call to action. Meghann Dawson just shared her story and how she has lived a life of ups and downs and is now inspiring others. She wanted to share her story and bring awareness to the work she's doing to try to help others as an empowerment coach. Here are Meghann Dawson's 5 suggestions to survive and thrive. Number 1, learn to hear your own voice. Number 2, get curious about your story. Number 3, stop trying to earn your worth. Number 4, create spaces where you can be fully seen. And number 5, let it be messy. Final thoughts as we close another great episode of Survive and Thrive 8791. Are there any final thoughts, Meghann Dawson?
Oh my gosh. First of all, thank you, Tim. What a wonderful conversation. I loved it so much. Final thought is just simplify your life. Learn to listen to your gut and your inner voice and just love yourself. Love yourself. You set the bar on how others are going to love you. And so wholeness first. Do what you need to so you love yourself. I'll thank my husband, Kelly, and my best friend, Shams. Actually, today, I can say, is her 50th birthday, my best friend. And after this, we are going away this weekend, the 3 of us. She's also she just went through a divorce, and we are kind of a friendly throuple, and we're going to celebrate her. So thank you so much, because the 2 of them are so supportive in me being me, and that has been the best.
Good stuff. On our next episode of Survive and Thrive 8791, we'll have another amazing guest in the Buck and Honey's remote studios who will share how they learn to survive and thrive. If you have a story to share or you know someone who does, please reach out to me at tdecora@gmail.com. Until next time, hang in there with whatever you happen to be going through, and with hard work, dedication, and determination, you can survive and thrive. Until next time, take care.